Scenes like these are all too common across Birmingham. Waste piling high, bins overflowing, and rats squeaking that you can hear from yards away. The smell of this rubbish is undescribable. And now, because it's been building up for so long, it's spreading into some of the few green spaces that we have here in Birmingham city centre. And that's something that Labour's Preet Gill, whose constituency this is pretty unhappy about.
These are the streets of your constituency. It must break your heart to see the state of this.
Yeah, look, absolutely. I mean, I have reported this. What we are seeing, though, is what started off as a small pile of rubbish is just really building. I've been here twice now, and I've just seen further down, people are coming now and fly tipping and bringing, rubbish from elsewhere and just dumping it here. And you can smell it. I mean, today's a warm day, and the stench from this, nobody wants to walk on footpaths where there is rubbish strewn everywhere.
My LBC colleague the other day called it a fruity smell. How would you describe it? Because I don't know if I'd go with fruity. It's pretty ripe though.
Oh no, I wouldn't go with fruity at all. I mean, it's really awful. Nobody wants to put up with smells like this. I mean, on a day like this, residents that live opposite here want to open their windows, allow the fresh air in. You wouldn't want to be doing that with this across the road.
In terms of the public health concern, I mean, if we just take a slightly closer look, I don't want to get too close, but I dread to think what that is all over this jacket here, and you can see all the bags here have been ravished by rats, and there's what looks like mouldy food there. Are you concerned for the health of the people living here?
I'm very concerned. I mean, and that's why a couple of weeks ago I wrote to the City Council about the public health emergency this is becoming. So I welcome the critical incident, because that means, that they are able to take alternative action. The reason we've seen the rubbish pile up, of course, was the blockages, at the depots. I'm really pleased that since Friday, though, things have been moving with the barriers being put up. 100 trucks were out, over the weekend. We've seen trucks coming out. I'm starting to see, and constituents are now writing, that rubbish is being collected. Of course, that's been about 1,600 tonnes on Monday. It's ramping up again on Tuesday. It will take a bit of time, of course, for the trucks to get everywhere and, prioritise the areas that's needed. But of course, I mean, the health of the citizens of Birmingham matters greatly, especially when people are sending me pictures of rats, of cockroaches. That is just unacceptable.
Do you think perhaps there needs to be a public health emergency declared? Because we've heard about people being bitten by rats. We've heard about rats getting into people's homes. Most of those rats have come from the sewers, so they're not clean when they get here.
Look, we need an end to the strikes, and as you know, there are talks that are taking place. The council say these are really productive. Fundamentally, though, we have got to reform the waste service. Even before the bin strikes, I can tell you this, my inbox was regularly filled with concerns about miscollections. And we, the citizens of Birmingham need a reliable and efficient bin service. So part of this is about reform. And the post that we're talking about doesn't exist anywhere else in the country. It is not part of the industry standard. And it's because of that post we've had equal pay liabilities. So I am really, really hopeful that the talks will result into ending the strikes, because fundamentally that is what, the citizens of Birmingham deserve: a waste service that's reliable, that is undertaking reform, because it's got to make sure it's advancing in terms of what it's providing the citizens for recycling, etc. And we haven't had that. So this is becoming a very difficult situation. I'm glad the government is taking, a very firm response to this as well. So let's see. I mean, I'm hoping that the talks will end the strikes.
Do you think Unite are being unreasonable?
Look, no worker is going to lose or has to lose any money. At the end of the day, there is a fair deal on the table. 80% of those that were affected have now accepted the deal. And it is absolutely that Unite needs to come back to the table, recognise that there is a fair deal, recognise that the public health of the citizens of Birmingham matters, and it needs to bring an end to these strikes.
And just focusing on Unite for a second, I think when we think of a strike like this that's lasted so long, we would envision deadlock talks between the Conservative Party or the Liberal Democrats or even Reform UK. But this is a Labour City Council and a trade union. I mean, it's almost unthinkable, really, that these talks would get so stuck, isn't it?
Well, look, Labour is on the side of the residents and the citizens of Birmingham City first and foremost, and it will work in their best interest. At the end of the day, we know everybody has a right to strike, and we've got to make sure that if you are at risk of losing a job, that there is a fair package on the table, that you've got job protections. Now, nobody has to lose any money. There is an offer on the table for those workers to take different roles, for example. So, this is despite it being a Labour council and a Labour government, we will work in the best interests of the constituents that we represent fundamentally. And Unite has a fair deal on the table. As I said, 80% of those workers have already accepted that deal. There's only a few people now holding a city of 1.2 million residents to ransom. That is unacceptable.
The Tories have called for a public health emergency to be declared in Birmingham because of the filth, because of the rats, because of the vermin. Would you back that call?
Well, look, weeks ago, I was the first person calling out that this is a public health emergency and it's a concern, and saying to the council that they had statutory powers, statutory duties to the citizens of Birmingham, because they had to make a decision. What takes precedence? Is it collecting the waste and therefore making sure there's no vermin on the streets of Birmingham? Or is it the strikes? And so I welcome that the council called a critical incident, because actually what that enabled them to do is bring in other measures, speak to government, get support to absolutely make sure that the first priority is that we collect the waste. We make sure that, you know, all the citing of what people are sort of sharing about the concerns around rats or cockroaches, that we don't see that growing into what is, you know, could become a really, really serious issue. So I don't accept that the Conservatives are now calling for a public health when I already have written to the council asking them to take action, and they did. They declared a critical incident.
Just on that vein, have you spoken to your colleague Wes Streeting about the health implications there?
As you know, Wes Streeting has already said this week that this is a public health concern, and he wants to see the strikes end, and that Unite have got to come back to the table in good faith to make sure that we can resolve this issue and bring an end to the strikes. He is equally concerned, and he understands and understands and accepts that this is a real public health concern.
If you were speaking to Unite, not to me, what would you say to them?
I would say that the council has been very fair and reasonable. We've got to reform the service. We need a reliable and efficient service. 80% of your workers have taken the deal. This is unacceptable to hold a city of 1.2 million residents to ransom. Bring an end to the strikes.
Just a word quickly as well, because obviously we know that Labour wants growth, we know that Labour wants more people in work. So why is it that people are having to take time off work to go to the tip because there's so few slots at the weekend? We've seen people getting in touch saying the tip's almost empty when they've gone for their appointment, but they can't get an appointment.
Well, look, the tip trucks are also coming out to different locations. I had one in my constituency on Friday at Woodgate Valley, and yes, of course, there's a huge line and queue of people trying to get there. The household waste centres have been extended in terms of their opening hours. They've been 7 days a week. The hours have been extended. But of course, the advice is leave your bins out. They will be collected. I am already seeing in parts of my constituency that the bins are being collected. The impact that we saw in the depots of the blockages really did have a significant impact of waste collections. Now that we're seeing 100 trucks out, now that we're seeing that the waste is being collected, I'm really, really hopeful that we are going to get on top of this situation.
For the City Council, you think they've been very reasonable. Can you tell us a little bit about what that offer is? Because they won't tell us.
Well, look, the fair deal is that, you know, of the 80% that have accepted the deal, many have taken actually a promotion in terms of a driver role, so and others have been offered other alternative roles at the same grade in different parts of the service, or other opportunities for training. There's a voluntary redundancy package that people have obviously taken. As I said, we're talking about a very small number of people now who are holding the city to ransom. I don't think that's acceptable. When 80% of the workers have accepted a deal, they wouldn't accept a deal if it wasn't a fair deal. And let's not forget, the city protects your pay for 6 months if you are affected, but nobody has to lose any money. That's the important message here. At the end of the day, the package that is on the table is very, very good, and that's why the strikes have got to come to an end. Unite also has a responsibility to the citizens of Birmingham, because as you say, this is a public health emergency, and collecting waste is an integral part of that, making sure there isn't the vermin on the streets of Birmingham. And actually, residents say to me that they find what Unite are doing equally unacceptable now that they know the facts, that this post doesn't exist anywhere else in the country. It's not part of an industry standard. Unite has workers across waste services across the country. They are very, very well aware of this. So people want to see Unite come back to the table in good faith and bring an end to these strikes.